I think that with every new Disney or Pixar sequel that we are introduced to that goes absolutely ballistic in the box office, we always seem to retouch the concept of the downfall of original IPs or the rise of the sequel age media. And I gotta admit, I've milked my fair share of this topic too. But it's just because she will never fully get adjusted to the length Hollywood will go to make sure these releases are a safe bet with every new adaptation, sequel, remake, or if they really want to get spicy, live action remakes. But when I see how this can spark projects such as X-Men 97 or Inside Out 2, I'm able to accept the landscape change for film a little bit more. But only just a little bit, it's still pretty bad. Inside Out 2 is the emotional return to the fascinating world of the inner workings of Riley's mind, and with Riley growing into a new chapter of her life, introducing ourselves to some brand new faces. Now these new faces are relatively more complex extensions of our previous emotions, being inherently representative of concepts that are more self-aware, not only with understanding self in present versus future form, but understanding self in relation to other people, essentially categorizing the original emotions to represent those immediate instinctive reactions to external stimuli, and the new emotions are the necessary introspective pieces that relates to the deeper awareness of oneself in relation to others and how others might perceive them, breeding this overall more intricate emotional landscape in its entirety. Now, one of these new characters in particular would trigger some reserves in me about this project when first announced, but would ultimately go on to single-handedly alter my opinion about this film through their incredible characterization, and that would be the character of anxiety.
Where can I put my stuff?
Anxiety is the main new emotion that joined the mind of Riley since she became a teenager, serving as that pseudo-antagonist, yes, but also has a refreshing approach to this feeling that has been exclusively villainized in media through nuanceless approaches. In hindsight, this inclusion of anxiety was ingenious, not only because this film could be a vessel to provide clarity for this misunderstood feeling, but because her heightened sense of anxiety plays perfectly into that adolescent egocentrism that should be kicking in around this age. That unintended ego one has as a teen, in which they feel like that they are the center of attention and that they have these unique experiences, which can quickly escalate into irrational thinking when anxiety is left wild to take control, such as in this movie. Anxiety is characterized as this mindful guide that can be helpful in moderation, but can lead to major issues if you let it be your primary driving force for too long. When first introduced, anxiety actually serves as the needed contrast from joy and her, while good-intentioned, relatively ignorant and uncomplicated way of thinking. Joy wants to cherish and hold on to this internal sense of self that Riley believes that she is a good person and has noble values. And while it is positive, it severely limits everything that encompasses Riley as a person. In fact, actively suppressing memories that go against the sense of self was shown later to heighten her internal turmoil when Riley was at her lowest. Joy was the pinnacle of simplicity, the antithesis to what anxiety represented, and that's why her simplistic mindset led to her and all the original emotions to eventually be suppressed, thus ultimately leading Joy on her own journey of self-reflection, in which she comes to understand that even emotions themselves can have depth and variety to them, and that exploring that chasm can lead to a greater appreciation of one's value, because the joy felt when being high on life while hanging out with friends is not the same joy as when you're at your lowest and alone, but continuing to still stay positive and showing your true resolve. As anxiety states herself, fear protects Riley from which can be seen, and she protects Riley from which cannot be seen. As Riley grows up and faces these more intricate situations, physically and emotionally, that layer of awareness and critical thinking was essential for her to properly process her present and future situations. And that's why at the start, anxiety was actually the more reliable emotion when handling the complex issue of how to handle hockey camp. Like when Joy's ignorance led to Riley making light of hockey camp and eventually pissing off her other campers, it was anxiety that led her to apologizing. It was anxiety that pushed Riley to get up early so that she can get that extra practice and really hone her skills, and it was anxiety that allowed for Riley to bond with those high school players so that she can have friends when it eventually rolls around. Anxiety's main goal was to consider every option available and take the necessary steps to set up Riley to be in the best possible position for school. And that's a fundamental but ultimately underrated aspect that isn't so recognized in many media's portrayal of anxiety. I'm gonna get real with you guys for a second. As someone who does have an extensive extensive history of anxiety, overthinking, and straight up anxiety and panic attacks, I can acknowledge that my anxiety has also been a pivotal role in many of my successes. It keeps me safe, it keeps me prepared, it keeps me aware of a lot. My fixation on analytical quality has helped me throughout my life, and it has led to me putting in as much effort as I can into my greatest creation, and that's this community and this channel. I still have my occasional flare-ups, but as I've gotten older, I've learned many methods to ease myself back some and channel this anxiety into something meaningful, as it's a part of me, and as Joy did for Riley, I had to learn to embrace every aspect of me. This is ultimately why I was afraid of Inside Out 2's presentation of anxiety when it was first announced, as it is no secret of Hollywood's recent indulgences in portraying anxiety and panic attacks in general. Some good, and others, It's just very easy to paint anxiety as the simple bad guy that's always getting in the way when you're trying to be brave or have a good time. That intense nervousness that eventually shows in physical form and is only there to completely break you, when that's just not always the case. Again, anxiety only wanted to help Riley, not wanting her to be ostracized in high school, which, even if an over-exaggeration of the teenage mind, pure isolation can be mentally detrimental to anyone. It wants to help, and when channeled and worked through properly, is able to do so quite effectively. But again, when it's in control at all times is when things start to crumble apart. When anxiety was at the head, this is where we see Riley go against her, even if simple, positive sense of self of her being a good person, and it's replaced with the worst belief system of her not being good enough, when she lets layers of anxiety-filled decisions take precedent over her life for too long. It spiraled out of control, and anxiety would only grow and become more irritable for as long as she became unchecked, leading to a heartbreaking panic attack as the weight of Riley's decisions over the last couple of days all come crashing down on her at once. It takes the combined effort of Riley regaining her sense of self, which is stronger than ever, of her calming down those nerves and taking anxiety out of control, and of her purposely choosing joy for her to finally find her center again. And even after, she still has to confront the residual effects of her anxiety-driven actions head on. By the end of this film, I absolutely adore that anxiety has not been outrightly repressed or ignored, but further used efficiently to focus on the controllables, which is a brilliant way to describe it, as Riley can't control when she makes the team or not after tryouts, but she can control how she does on that Spanish test. The Inside Out franchise has just solidified its brand off the back of embracing the nuance of emotions, and letting us know that our instinctual human feelings are not something that needs to be overcome, but embraced. Anxiety was that perfect foil to highlight Joy's elementary exploration of who Riley was as a person, and how she herself should operate as an emotion, with anxiety being a literal representation of the complexities of Riley and how life will only get more complicated as you figure out that true sense of self.
Nice kid.
I think Inside Out 2 was a good movie turned great through their choice of interpretation for the motion of anxiety. I do say just good initially though, because we do see a lot of rehashing plot points from the 2014 original, such as Joy's entire arc of accepting other emotions and how they're just as vital to Riley as she is, being pretty similar in both films to a certain extent, almost to a point that it seemed like slight character regression in order to make this plot work. Now I'm definitely no writer, and what the creative team has done for this film was nothing short of amazing, but I do think things could have worked pretty well if you frame this as Joy being almost too accepting of Riley's new emotions, to the point of kind of leaving them unchecked, partly due to her previous situation with sadness and partly due to her own insecurity of not feeling complex enough. The new emotions start helping at first, but then anxiety grows out of control, and that's when the original emotions get repressed again. Then things can sort of line back up with their original sequel. So if the first movie was about Joy learning how to give control, the sequel can be about finding that healthy mental balance, especially for a film centering the ultimate helpful in moderation emotion of anxiety, but that's just an off-the-dome idea. The movie also felt like most of our original cast was again taking that developmental backseat, with a lot of the new cast also just seemingly being there to drop the occasional relatable line or be a walking stereotypical teenage allegory. I'm a bit more accepting of this though, as this left room for development of the character of anxiety, and if you already couldn't tell already, I firmly believe that this was just so beautifully done. The fortunate part of it all is that I think Inside Out may be one of those rare cases where it structurally makes sense to keep making sequels? Riley will only get older and naturally face new changes and challenges as she dips into different parts of her life, whether that be the pressures of a college student, the stresses of maintaining her first job, or the even bigger stressors of becoming a mother. We could even explore a new person with a new situation who has a unique mindset that could be explored. Maybe focus on someone who has felt so down for so long that the rest of their emotions have to go on a journey to find their missing joy. Or have a story centering someone who has repressed their fear and anxiety for so long that they don't know how to handle it when it comes back, seemingly with a vengeance. I think for as long as this team is willing to give interesting perspectives on the mind and harp on the importance of all aspects of human emotions, they will have a striking story to tell.